Good morning guys, welcome to the tutorial on a Seascape. It's just a simple one, but for beginners it's a good place to start. Right, we'll have a quick look at the drawing. I put in an horizon line here. I've used the pencil a little bit heavier than I normally would, just so that you can see it on the video, hopefully. And I've used a ruler to get a straight line across there for the horizon. It's just below halfway. Never put anything exactly halfway. It's either, depending on what you want to feature most, the sky or the sea, you can put it just below halfway or just above halfway. I've chosen just below. Okay, so I've used the ruler, drawn a straight line. I've drawn in a cliff shape there, put a little bit of a castle on, reminds me of Scarborough Castle. And then I've done the shoreline just roughly with some pencil marks there, and I've put a couple of these little pencil marks here to represent the waves that are just coming in onto the shoreline. I've placed some pencil drawing here of roughly where some rocks are going to go. Okay, that is the drawing, simple, straightforward. So now let's get on. I have actually started, I've put a little bit of masking fluid around the edges of the cliff and the castle, simply because we're going to start by putting in the sky. Just before we start, we've done that. Now I'm going to show you, we're going to just, okay, right, that's fairly dry now, so we can paint over there. So what this masking fluid is actually doing is just going to protect the horizon line and the cliff edge, so that when we've finished and the sky is dry, we can take that off and then add the different colours on. Right, so the sky. So we've mixed the colours, everything's mixed first. Make sure you mix that first. So now I'm going to use a sponge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the whole of this sky area down to the horizon line. Okay, so make sure your sponge is very clean. And then just soak it in the water. Okay. Put it onto the paper, down to the line. Pull it across, round the cliff, over the castle. Okay. Make sure your edges get as much water as the centre does, because most people tend to put it on and it all gets into the middle of the paper and puddles up. Okay, so if you're not sure if your paper is wet enough, the dangerous thing is people... Hello, welcome back. The sky is now dry. Okay, and as you can see now, it's dried us slightly lighter tones. And it's nicely blended in, giving these nice effect to the clouds. Could provide edges there, but you expect to get that in skies, but mostly really nice cloud effect. And if you look and notice, you've got the lighter colour, the Naples yellow colour is slightly lighter there and darker there. That's because I put the paint on the brush and I've gone along, and as I've worked along and gone up here, there's less paint on, so it's given it some nice tonal effects as well. So you don't want to overload your brush all the time. And as I say, it's down to mixture. So you've already got paper that's wet. So if you can see the paint moving about there in the palette, it needs to be watery. You need the colour there. The danger is when people first start, the colour isn't strong enough. So when it dries, it dries very, very weak. But you also need it, so it's like a milky consistency. So it's like when you're pouring some milk out. So it wants to be fairly watery, and then if you put in like any colour that you don't want to spread too far, you just make it slightly thicker, because it will then move on the paper with the water, but not as far as it would if it was really watery. Okay, so that's the secret, and it's just practicing with the brush. Hold your brush on the side, twist it along, and just literally put what you think of the clouds in, and let the water on the paper do its work and blend with the pigment, and you will get some fantastic effects. Okay, so we've kept those colours because we're going to need them, because as you know, you've got the sea here, but you will also have some of the sky colours reflected in it, especially around this area here. Okay, first things first, we're going to remove this masking fluid. Now most people, the way they do it is by using the finger just to gently pull it along. Now this is why you have to ensure that the paint is completely dry, because if that was wet and you're rubbing this, you're going to actually rub the paint into this paper, which is not what we want. Okay, so because it's fairly fresh, the longer you leave masking fluid on, the harder it is to remove. So this is fresh, so it should come straight off without too much problem. Okay. But if you like, you can get something, what we call a masking fluid eraser. There's also some liquid you can buy, which is masking fluid. It removes it from your brushes and your nibs. So, as we say, by putting it in the soap, it does preserve your brushes a lot. But also, if you've got this, it can make sure it comes off your brushes, so your brushes will last a lot longer. Okay, so this is, with the rubber, you can just gently, like you would with your finger, and it pulls off the masking fluid. So you've got that option as well. But it's the same as using your finger. It's just some people don't like the feel of the masking fluid on the fingers. It isn't really the nicest thing to use, but it has its purpose. Okay, so I'm going to use a dry brush there and brush off. Oops, the stray hair there. You can go. There we go. So now we can see we've got the sky, it's dry, we've got the horizon, and we've got the cliff edges and whatever. So now what we're going to do is we're going to apply some more masking fluid around these little edges here, and I'll explain the purpose of those in a while. But we're also now going to introduce a new effect, which is we're going to put some wax resist on here. And the reason why we're going to do that is you've often seen when you look out to sea, or if you look into a lake, you'll see the sun glistening on there and it leaves like white sparkly lines across. So that's the effect we're looking for. So I've got a household candle here with a sharpish edge, because I don't want right thick lines, I just want thin ones. So you can actually, using a knife, shape your candle a little bit more if you want. So excuse me, I'm just going to turn the board on its side, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put carefully across the top near the horizon, not full big long lines, but just little lines here and there. And if you hold your paper, you should be able to see where they're going. So you're putting wax down. You won't see it as clearly as you can masking fluid, but just put a few little bits in there. Okay, and that will stay on your paper. If you move your paper, you can just about see them. Now that, you don't take that off like we do masking fluid, that will stay there. But what will happen is when we put the paint on for the sea, it won't, it'll go over the wax, so it should give a nice little sparkly effect. Okay, so now I'm going to do the masking fluid again, and what we're going to do this time is we're going to do, as the water comes into the edge onto the beach, you get these little ripples of white foam areas. So what we're going to do is we want to preserve the white of the paper. So I'm going to use this brush, and in fact I'm going to use a smaller brush because the danger with this is that you get the lines too thick and then they look a little bit false. So I'm literally going to use a small brush, load it with some masking fluid. Now I'm not going to do a solid line across here, I'm just going to do some broken lines. Okay, so I'm more or less following where my pencil marks are, and I'm just literally doing some little broken lines, not all the way across, and it's quite fine, especially as you go in further into the distance. It can be a little bit wider as you come up here. Okay, so that's the edge where it literally comes onto the beach. These are in the sea. Again, just put some little marks, broken lines. Don't want to be straight lines either. If you think about it, when the waves come in, they're at all different shapes and angles. Okay, probably a little one here. Another one there. Okay. Let's put it right there. That should do for now. Again, clean the brush. On the side, put the lid on. Masking fluid. I've always learned to re-put the lid on because it has been knocked over once, and it doesn't make a nice, it makes a horrible mess all over your carpet. Okay, So we're just going to let this dry a little bit. So while that's drying, we're going to mix some colour. We're going to do the cliff first. So for the cliff, we're going to use the credit card method that we used the other day on the cliffs. But we're going to, the colours, this is what we've got to think about. So I'm looking at this being quite chalky at this end. And this end I'm going to put sort of some greenery on there as well. So we'll use the credit card method more on this side, and then this side we'll use the brush effect to create some sort of foliage. Even though it's in the distance, we still want the colours there so people can, you can actually tell there is some greenery around there. And then we've got the castle bit to do as well. So I'm going to use, for the initial part of this cliff here, I'm going to use the sky colour here that we've used. And also we need to mix up some greens for further up here, and some more of the grey. So the grey, I'm going to make this time, I'm going to make it a little bit, it's going to be a darker grey. So what we do is we use the ultramarine blue instead of the cobalt blue. Okay, so some ultramarine blue, a little bit of rose madder, and then quite a lot of the burnt sienna. Probably add a touch more of the blue to it. Okay, there we go. So we've got quite a dark mix there. The brush. So let's think about the green. So we're going to have some tonal values in there. So I'm using a little bit of the Aurorolin. You can use cadmium. You can use the colours that you've got basically in your palette. So a nice brightish yellow with a little bit of the cobalt blue, and that gives you a nice sort of lightish green. Just add a little bit more of the Aurorolin there. So it may appear a little bit bright. So what we're going to do is, if you add a little touch of raw sienna to it, it's sort of, there we go, it takes off that acidy look, but it's still a nice light green. We've got that green. Then I think we're going to also have a darker green. So I'm going to use, now this is Viridian. So as you can see, it's quite a bright, not a nice green on its own. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the ultramarine blue, turn it into a turquoise colour, dark turquoise. And then this is the magic piece. You get quite a lot of burnt sienna. Add that to it, and that will turn it into a nice, dark but rich olivey green, which for distant trees is brilliant. Okay, so I've got my colours. So let's have a go now at this sky. So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this to start with. I'm just going to use a nice 12mm flat brush. Okay, so I'm not wetting the paper. I'm just going to go straight in with this. First of all, the Naples yellow. Okay, so up there, across there. I'll make this a little bit thicker now because I want to plenty more of this. So it's a lot thicker than what it was in the sky, and a little bit deeper in colour. So I'm going to put that on there, come across there. Okay, and then as it goes across there, I'm just going to clean my brush, take the excess water out, squeeze it out with my fingers, and just literally add a little bit of water there, just to fade that in, so we can add, because we'll be coming into it with different colours, but it's just so it fades it away nicely, so you don't end up with any sort of rough, horrible edges. And then we just take the credit card, or the piece of card, or palette knife, whichever you want to use. And then if we just gently pull that away, oops, My box to clean the edge of the card. And just keep pulling it down just so we get right, a little error I've made, so let me just gently tap that with some dry paper and just extend that cliff out a little bit there. Okay, so this is where you have to be careful with the edges of the card. Make sure that they're clean. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that up and down like that. Just so we can get some. So you can see there we've got roughly some edges of the cliffs. Okay, so that's the piece you've really got to be, that's very careful with that, with the card. These darker bits I'm not too worried about because they will, I'm just going to soften that in a little bit and sort of straighten the bottom of the edge up. Yeah, I will be putting some darker colour in there. Okay, so that's that bit. So now we're going to do, I'm going to start putting some of this greenery in. So I'm using a small brush now because we're working in a smaller area. So the brush I'm actually using is an Aquafine Round number 6. Now, we are also going to be having across the top here, there's going to be some, I'm doing it quite light there because that's where the sun's going to be hitting it. And then just up here, I'm just going to twist the brush a little bit and make the effect that there is some greenery and some trees up there as well. Okay. And then that's that bit done there. So now what we need to do is we need to make this look like we've got some greenery in there. So again, I'm going to pick up, so I've just taken a little bit of the initial green that we got, the lighter green, and put it into another of the wells. And all I'm going to do is add a little bit more of this cobalt blue to it so that we've got another green. So we've got a mid-green as well. So we'll start with the lighter green, sort of using the side of the brush. Put little bits across there like that. Pull it across. Just add a little bit more water to it. Pull it across like that. Go into the top there where you've pulled it down a little bit. Pull some more down there. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with the slightly darker colour. Okay, just drop in some bits there, coming down here towards the base of the and then I'm going to pick the nice, the really nice olivey green that we made. So that, I'm going to put that in. That's a little bit thicker as well, the mix, because again, I don't want it to spread as far. And I'm going to put this in sort of, because it's in the distance, you're not really having to make definite shapes, but we're going to have a dark edge across the bottom of the cliff. Okay, and then just coming up there, we're just putting little bits of, leaving other bits of the green to come through. Okay, clean your brush. Now, if you've got a number 4, I've got a number 4 brush there, and now number 6. Must have a number 4 somewhere. What we got here. So this is a number 4. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is the grey that we had mixed up, which we made darker. What I'm literally going to do here is just put in a few bits of shadow on the edges of this cliff here where we put the credit card, but also put a few little bits of horizontal ones in there as well. Okay, and then just what this is doing is putting in the shadows that you would expect to find in the rocky part of the cliff. Okay, so I'm just softly blend them in. So really I'm just sort of jumbling the colours about there, blending them in as much as I can there. Okay. Pull that down again a bit more with the card. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a small piece of tissue, and on this edge, because that's furthest away, I want to try and soften that edge in a bit more. I'm just going to dab off some of the excess there. Okay, so you can actually put on, put a little damp brush, just tap it there, and then just tap it away there. Okay, and you can see how it's sort of lightening the edges away there. So it's softening it into the distance. Just put more of those. So the cliff edges in there. There, and just leave that now to dry. With the dark shadow, we've got this little bit of a castle that I've done on the top. So it's going to be quite silhouetted. So all I'm really going to do is I'm using the dark grey that we mixed, and I'm just literally painting it in and trying to remember to be, because it comes down there, across there, and try to just work around to some little areas where it's open, where the old type windows would have been. Just leave a couple of gaps like that there, just to give it the effect. And then just there you go. And you've got a silhouette castle on top of the hill. So that's that section done. So let that dry, and then we can come back to that. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing this the seascape bit there. So we need the colours for the sea, and we also, as I say, we need the colours that we used for the sky to put in the reflections, because you would obviously see reflections from the sky into the sea because it's water, so it's like a bit of a mirror. So I'm just going to let that dry a couple of minutes. I'll pop the hairdryer on it. Just before I finish, using the number 4, what we need to do is, let's just tidy with the shadow piece. Let's just tidy this little bit up here. So we could have a bit of a, so coming around there. Just right at the very bottom, just put a little darker. That's where it would be darker. Using a very fine brush. I'm using a number 4 brush here. It's got quite a long point on it. It's a detailer, number 4. Okay. Across there. And that should do for the clip. So I'm going to dry that off with the hairdryer, and then I'm going to come back to you, and we should be able to then go on to the sea. Okay, thank you.